you all for joining, and thank you very much, Declan, for joining.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. Lovely to be with you, and thank you, Amit and IDP, for the opportunity.
Great. And for my audiences, let me just share with you today. Of course, we'll talk with Declan, but what I thought it would be absolutely prudent to discuss, because Ireland is a very unique and different destination in all respects. So it will be interesting to understand from Declan in terms of what are the diversified new career opportunities and what are the training programs, plus how does the education in Ireland overall look forward or look at changing the landscape of education, attracting better quality students, kind of thing. So I know we'll have a lot to understand through Declan. But before that, let me just formally introduce Declan. He is the Associate Director of Global Engagement and currently leads on national and international student recruitment strategies at the Trinity College Dublin. He has over 20 years of experience in leading large multicultural teams to deliver on global student recruitment, student experience, marketing, and university partnership strategies in the higher education sector. He has done a bachelor's from Trinity, University of Dublin, Master of Arts in Development from Dublin City University, and Master of Arts in International Trade Management from University of Santiago de Compostela, Spain. So, of course, you have had a variety of education. You have a fantastic experience of leading institutions, leading their international strategies. So, give us some insight in terms of what's the current sense amongst the Irish institution with regard to international students, and how do you see India as a destination to recruit from?
Yeah, yes, thank you. I think certainly, like many countries, we were all, trying to cope with the pandemic and the challenges that brought. But I think what had been very clear in recent years was that Ireland was a rising destination in terms of importance in attracting international students. We've had very considerable growth in that regard. And happily, they're coming from a wide range of countries. But I think certainly India has been at the forefront of that. And there's been a very active level of engagement between Ireland and India in terms not only of higher education, but also I think in terms of increasing trade, increasing business opportunities. So I think this is definitely attracting more and more Indian students to Ireland. And happily, I think this year, we've seen certainly in Trinity a really major increase in the number of Indian students coming back again post-pandemic. So we're very happy, I think, with what we're seeing. I think the plans for the Irish institutions are really to come back into India now in terms of in-person engagement. And, we have a team on the ground in India, based mainly in Delhi and Chennai. And I think we're really excited about the prospect of expanding to other regions and building on the growth that we're currently seeing.
Great. Now, one thing which, like you said about possible growth and all, and what we see in this market, of course, there's a lot of interest towards destinations like Canada, US, and some others like Australia and all. In comparison to those destinations, how do you project Ireland to prospective students, and what would be your top 3-4 USPs to tell students that why Ireland is more attractive a destination?
Yeah, sure. I think obviously Ireland, in comparison with some of the other destinations, is a little bit smaller in terms of size. I mean, we have a population of over 5 million. But I think what's at the heart of the success of Ireland, and this has been very much supported by the high caliber of international students that we have coming into the country, is a really dynamic economy. I mean, Ireland is projected to be the fastest growing economy in the whole European Union next year. There's huge amounts of international investment coming in to Ireland. Many multinational companies around the world use Dublin, which is the capital city of Ireland, as their European headquarters. So I think from the perspective of Indian students looking to develop their career opportunities, I think Ireland's a really exciting option. I think also Ireland's really famous in terms of the quality of its education. Going back historically, Ireland was known as the land of saints and scholars. And I think that emphasis on education is still there today. If you look at the rankings the average rankings of many Irish institutions. It's very, very high relative to some other countries. I think certainly that's the case for Trinity. I mean, we were very happy with the news last week that we are now back in the top 100 universities in the world as ranked by QS. So there's a really good, consistent level of education. Apart from that, obviously, when students go abroad, the whole quality of life is so important. I think we've seen that during the pandemic. The quality of student experience, that sense of safety, of being welcomed is really important. And Ireland really comes out consistently in international surveys as one of the friendliest destinations in the world, one of the most welcoming destinations in the world. And also, I think at the moment, certainly one of the safest places in the world. Dublin, I think a couple of weeks ago, was ranked as the #3 safest city in the world. So I think it's a really positive, dynamic, cosmopolitan, welcoming environment for students. And of course, many people always talk about the beauty of Ireland. I mean, that's always a factor. Certainly if you go around Dublin and you go around our countryside, it's a really beautiful place. And many of the Indian students have really commented on the joy they feel, you know, getting out of the city and being able to travel very easily to some of the most beautiful places in the world.
Interesting. Now, one thing I wanted to ask is, of course, we have a lot of students who would like to hear from you, especially on programs, especially in the area of finance and fintech, and the trending terms of course, fintechs and all. What insight would you like to give to students in terms of programs and career opportunities? And I'm asking this more so because I know for a fact that there are hundreds of global organizations who have got Ireland as their European headquarters, and a lot of opportunities I know for sure in place. But I think coming from you would, of course, give more insights to students, especially in these areas.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, well, finance has definitely been at the forefront of the development of the Irish economy. We have an Irish Financial Services Centre, which I think has seen spectacular growth in recent years in terms of the type of companies in the finance sector that it's attracting. You have the big four, obviously, you know, top accounting consultancy companies in the world, like KPMG are based in Dublin, and they're very active graduate programs. And certainly many students from Trinity, including Indian students, are able to join those programs and get really wonderful experience. There's lots of other sectors as well. I mean, the pharmaceutical sector, I think Ireland has something like 19 out of the top 20 pharmaceutical companies in the world who are based here. And we're seeing real growth as well in lots of other areas such as engineering. And, you know, Ireland has been an example in terms of governance and society development in terms of our peace progress here. So programs such as international peace studies, law, all of these are very, very important. I think one thing about Dublin, just to get that across, and Ireland, is that we are now the only, I think, formally English-speaking country in the European Union. I mean, Malta is obviously there as well. So we're attracting a huge amount of companies to make Dublin their European headquarters. So with that comes really strong opportunities in the area of finance, cybersecurity, data analysis. All of these things are connected. Even in law, you know, many of our law graduates are going to work for some of these top companies. So I think these sectors are really developing, and I think, you know, there is a sense that Ireland and Dublin is becoming one of the capitals for, you know, in terms of data centers and for fintech. So there's a huge amount of employment in this area, and it's been identified by the Irish government as being an absolute priority for growth in the next few years. So I think it's a really wonderful opportunity right now to come in and capitalize on those opportunities.
Interesting. So in addition to, like you said, these popular programs wherein a lot of students are attracted globally to come into Ireland, would you like to give us some sense to students which you think are the new or the recent announcements by various institutions in terms of the new launches of programs? And in addition, which are the areas you think institutions may be considering to come up with some new programs to offer to prospective students?
Yes, well, I think certainly what we're seeing here, and I suspect it's probably the same in India, is the whole focus around sustainability and sustainable futures. I think obviously everybody around the world is really concerned about sustainability in the context of climate change. And I think we're seeing a huge amount of innovation in that area. So I think that's programs related to that certainly seem to be growing in popularity. And I think a lot of institutions of Ireland are in that space. Just as an example, in Trinity, we recently had a project called E3, which is engineering, environment, and emerging technologies. And this is basically an attempt to build on what is a common trend now, I think, in education, which is a multidisciplinary approach, where you're not separating subjects out, but trying to find a way to bring them together so you can actually get a wide range of skills and knowledge. So E3 brings together the schools of engineering, computer science, and environmental sciences. And it's really, I suppose, setting challenges to students in terms of working together across those disciplines to try and address some of the future environmental challenges that the world is facing. And I think that's really helping students to develop a really wide range of skills. So I think certainly STEM is on the rise, and I think students looking at those kind of areas, maybe connected to the Sustainable Development Goals, which the United Nations has outlined, I think there's going to be really increasing career opportunities in that. And I suspect back in India too, I think many of the skills that students would get through studying those kind of subjects would be really applicable when they come back home.
Interesting. There are a few questions from the audiences. I think it is appropriate at this moment to take one of those questions. As people are interested to know what are the broad differences, if at all there's any, in terms of the teaching methodologies as offered by Irish institutions as compared to some other corporate destinations.
I think in terms of quality assurance, again, going back to rankings and some of the things that institutions are assessed on, I think the teaching methodologies are very similar in many ways. I think there's a great emphasis on transferable skills, and trying to find ways to help students not just acquire knowledge, but be able to really develop those skills. So in Trinity, for example, we talk a lot about graduate attributes, and that's not just connected to what you do inside the classroom, but it actually can be developed by what you do outside the classroom. And I think there's a great emphasis in Ireland on that and encouraging students to get involved in societies and clubs. Trinity, for example, has two of the oldest student societies in the world, the Philosophical Society, the Historical Society. All of these clubs are run by students. So actually it's a really good opportunity to develop skills around organization and planning, critical thinking, communication skills. So I think that's a really strong focus of Irish teaching methodology. It's not just what you do in the classroom, but it's the entire ecosystem of where you're learning. Certainly I think in Trinity and other Irish universities, we're obviously research led. So I think that's extremely important. And there's a real focus on helping all kinds of students, not just graduate students, but also bachelor students, really develop research skills, because that ability to go out and identify data and knowledge that's out there and find a practical application, which maybe a company later on will want to use, is really important. So in Trinity, for example, our bachelor students also do what we call capstone projects, which are little research projects as well, to really develop those skills. And I think one of the things we're really insistent on in Trinity, I mean, sometimes in universities you have professors who spend most of the time on research, and of course that's really important, but we really endeavor to make sure that some of the top academics in their field in the world are also in the classroom. So some of the leading experts in biotechnology and science are teaching first-year bachelor students. So that experience of being in the room with some of these leading professors, getting that knowledge, but then also finding ways to apply that knowledge in very practical ways is important. I think one other thing as well is obviously increasing use of internships. We want to really bring practical experience into many of the programs that we have. One of the most popular programs we have is a dual BA, for example, that we run with Columbia University. It's in arts and humanities, but also in STEM. And very much part of that is built into it would be internship opportunities. So that could be in Dublin or later in the sectors connected to Columbia University in New York. So lots of emphasis on knowledge, but also developing a really transferable practical skills in the class, through the classroom and outside.
And you touched upon an issue in terms of you getting a lot of people from industry to come in and start teaching in the first semester itself or in the first year itself. What would be the level of interaction for those who go for master's degree programs, especially the MBA programs or MSc finance programs, or kind of things which are leading to something like, you finish the program and you are job ready kind of thing. So what is the level of influence and intervention from industry here in these programs, wherein they come in and not just teach but also talk about the traits to be better professionals tomorrow and kind of things. So what's your comment on that?
Yes, no, absolutely. And I think you can particularly see that in the development of Trinity's Business School, for example, where some of the programs you mentioned, are really growing very significantly. Our business school is one of the fastest growing in the world. I think many of our master's programs, such as the Masters in Finance, just to go back to FinTech, are ranked #1. And I think part of the reason for that growth and development are the really strong industry connections. Trinity, for example, just given our locations in the center of the city, we're really surrounded by an ecosystem of multinationals. There's the Silicon Docks, which is in about a 10-minute walk of Trinity. And there you have, very famous multinationals like Alphabet, you've got Microsoft, you've got Google, some of the top financial companies are there as well. And so we have built very strong connections with them. And that really determines how we design our curriculum, the kind of subjects that we're teaching. But also we have really strong connections in them coming in. We run lots of careers fairs, for example, and they're really able to communicate to students about the kind of skills and career opportunities that they have. One other thing I think that's really become important in Dublin and in Ireland is as a centre for entrepreneurship and innovation. So, for example, in the last 6 years, Trinity, our university, has ranked #1 according to PitchBook, which actually measures the amount of capital investment from companies on the outside into campus startups. So that has really forged some very strong connections between companies on the outside and student-based companies that have started up. And, we've attracted record amounts of capital investment there. So it's a very symbiotic relationship. And, particularly in a country the size of Ireland and Dublin, we have really great opportunities to build those connections with those companies. Trinity, for example, on many measures is leading in terms of employer reputation, for example, if you look at employability rankings. So I think those relationships are strong, and I think students will have a really good opportunity to connect with some of those companies and learn from them and be able to plan their own future careers on that basis.
Now, one thing which comes to mind is to understand from you, and I know students will be as eager to understand. There's a certain amount of investment, of course, each student would make to pursue an education internationally, and that's very aspirational, especially in this part of the world. What is the kind of career support Trinity or Irish institutions offer to these students, not just for the opportunities in terms of employment once they complete the course, but also for some part-time works or some other projects and kind of things. So your insight would be really helpful.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, obviously, we're very conscious of the fact that for students, this is a huge investment, and their main priority is to develop their potential employability skills. So, when students come in, I think this would be across the institutions in Ireland. There's very active, very dynamic career support services that are available. So they would do a huge amount of work on helping students to develop their CVs, for example, find ways to present their information in a very clear way. There'd be a focus on interview skills. Obviously, we're bringing employers in, as I mentioned, so there's lots of talks about that where employers and students are able to connect to understand really where the future skills are going to be required. It's a very dynamically changing environment. So as well, I think in Ireland, on a positive side, students are able to work part-time. You're able to work up to 20 hours a week while you're studying, and afterwards up to 40 hours a week in some full-time employment. So obviously the career services that really keep active track of all of the opportunities just around Trinity, for example, because we're located on a beautiful campus in the center of the city. There would be multiple opportunities to do part-time work, and we keep a very active database where students can go in and access that kind of information. After you graduate, I think this is really important. There is an opportunity in Ireland to get what's called a stay-back visa. So you can work for up to 1 or 2 years after you graduate. So we really actively do a really focused job in making sure that companies understand that and that there are really great opportunities to employ some of our international graduates. And again, we're really forging strong connections between students and external companies with a view to finding those opportunities after graduation.
As you know, we are focusing here especially on the cybersecurity and the fintech side of it. And there are some comments and questions from students. One, of course, they would like to understand more in terms of the career opportunities too, for both the areas, especially in the fintech, as you know, it's something which more and more students are attracted towards. And considering what you earlier said, Ireland being the European headquarters for a lot of international organizations, people want to know in terms of the scholarship opportunities around these programs, and as much a little more focus in terms of career opportunities in these two broad areas. If you can share some thoughts around it.
Yes, well, absolutely. And I think, at the heart of that is the fact that Dublin has become the headquarters for many, many large institutions now, particularly European ones. So I think there's a real sense that Dublin is becoming, one of the data capitals of Europe. And particularly there's lots of controls and guidelines within the European Union over the use of data. So at the moment, I think it's a really growing sector in cybersecurity. I think there's over 6,000 to 7,000 people working in that sector. It's really grown in recent years. And it's all part of Ireland's really strong strategy to create a very active digital economy. So we're seeing lots of jobs going up in terms of cybersecurity analysts. Security engineering is extremely strong. Some of the big four companies such as EY run a very active graduate program in terms of cybersecurity. So I think you're seeing an increase in the number of institutions around Ireland offering qualifications in this space. I think IT Carlow, National College of Ireland, for example, do it. We address it through our computer science degree, which has become extremely popular in terms of data science, and security is part of that in recent years. So I think you're also seeing as well some of the top companies, multinational companies in this space, such as McAfee, are also making their headquarters in Dublin. So I think it's really creating a very networked ecosystem where people are able to come in and look at the cybersecurity space. And I think those opportunities are really going to grow strongly. In terms of fintech, as I mentioned, we have a financial services center. So this has attracted many companies from around the world. And I think there's really, strong opportunities in this space. We have two programs really connected to that, the Masters in Finance and the Masters in Financial Risk Management, for example, which are producing graduates going into some of these top companies. So I think it's a very active space, and I think given Brexit as well, this is another factor. Many companies are choosing to relocate to Ireland. So I think this trend is really going to continue, where there's opportunities in finance and technology.
Great. Very useful thoughts from you. One more question which is coming from student is, does Irish institutions or Trinity per se offers any kind of inbuilt internship with any of these programs, be it in cybersecurity or fintech or some other business programs or some other popular programs for students who are coming from different international destinations to Ireland?
Yes, it's really going. So, for example, in our global business degree at bachelor level, certainly by the time you get to year 3, many students are either thinking of taking a mobility experience or an internship experience. So that's really developing in some of our engineering and technology degrees as well. That's a very active part. And I think that would be very much the case for a lot of programs around the sector. So I think there's a really strong focus on, really developing the opportunity for students to develop some of those practical skills. And in terms of, I mentioned, for example, the dual BA with Columbia, which is across a range of disciplines, but very much built into that is that need to get internship experience. So again, our career office are very good at identifying some of those opportunities and assisting students to find them.
Very interesting. I'm sorry, but I think there's a few more questions around scholarships because that's something which is naturally exciting students to ensure that they make best use of these opportunities available to them. So if you can just throw some more light in terms of scholarships offered by Irish institutions, Government of Ireland for international students, or if there are some other bodies who offer scholarships to students.
Yes, well, there are quite a range of those. So Government of Ireland, you mentioned, which run every year, which I think offers up to 60 scholarships per year spread across the Irish institutions. We typically in Trinity, we get about 6 or 7 of those, which is a fairly high proportion. So that is available. And it offers students a tuition waiver, which means their tuition fees are paid. And it also offers a stipend on top of that as well. There are some other international organizations in this space, obviously depending where students are coming from, such as Fulbright as well. And you will find, for example, sometimes there are program-specific scholarships available. So I mentioned E3 earlier, which is our STEM faculty-based program. So they have a wide range of scholarships across computer science, engineering, and natural sciences. Just my department in Trinity is global engagement, and we have really developed a very active range of scholarships. We call them the Global Excellence Scholarships, and they're available to students on all programs. And we certainly encourage students who are thinking of coming in to apply for those. They offer a partial tuition fee waiver. And we are increasingly developing some very thematic scholarships. So I talked earlier about sustainability and the Sustainable Development Goals. We have now a number of scholarships in that space as well. So certainly students are interested in coming to do programs that are related to solving some of the world's problems. And developing skills that will help you to do that. We've got an increasing number of scholarships in that area. And I think you'd find that in all Irish institutions. I think there's a really conscious sense that, helping students with their funding is extremely important. And, we're certainly very active in that space as well in Trinity.
Great. I think all what you have said is extremely useful to the students, those who have made applications, those who are aspiring to make applications, those who are, especially as we speak in these times, trying to get into either make a visa application kind of things. Very, very reassuring thoughts about the scholarships, job opportunities, part-time work, for them to be in Ireland and have a safe stay, look for great career opportunities. So thank you so very much, Declan Coogan from the University of Trinity College Dublin. And thanks for your time. Thanks for your insights. And I'm sure our students would have benefited from your thoughts and insights.
Well, listen, thank you, Amit, for the opportunity, and just to wish all of the students out there the best of luck with their studies. And certainly we would love the opportunity to welcome you to Ireland. So hopefully we'll see some of you in the future. But thank you very much.
Thank you so much.